I reviewed the first 2 seasons of the show like a month or two ago. I took a break. I've seen Breaking Bad like 30 times. But I'm back at it. I binge-watched season 3 really fast when I heard the news that they were bringing back Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul to reprise their roles in Better Call Saul, season 6, which I have not watched all of Better Call Saul. I'm only like a season into that. But I figured I'd finish my Breaking Bad show. I binge-watch that, review that, then go through Better Call Saul. So hopefully by the summer when the finale happens, I'll be able to do that live. Or within that time frame. But if you've seen my other reviews for these, you know that I don't really talk about how I feel about things necessarily, but I kind of talk about the characters and how they change throughout the course of the season, because that's Breaking Bad's like highlight. So I'm really excited to talk about this one because it's I think my least favorite season. Breaking Bad Season 3 was released in 2010, and it kind of starts off a little rough, because the last season left off with us learning that Skyler learns about, Walt's big secret. And it's a huge thing, and there's the whole airplane debris thing, and Aaron Paul's character, I don't know why I say Aaron all the time, Jesse, is having problems with getting over his girlfriend's death. Played by Kristen Ritter, and I don't know, it starts off really slow. Like, we get Skyler talking about divorce, Jesse's in rehab, we learn about the twins, which are Tuco's cousins. They're coming in trying to find and kill Walt because they think Walt killed Tuco, and it's a whole big mess. And it takes like 3 episodes to really progress that storyline, where we meet Gus, and Gus is becoming more and more of a threat. You can kind of feel that lingering, but it does take its time with that, and I almost wish it didn't. It just felt a little pretentious, which it is. I mean, it is, but it also, it just takes a little bit too much time, in my opinion. Still good. I think each episode is good, but they're not as good as other episodes that have actual stuff happen, because most of these, they just take a long time. We get to know the new lab that Walter gets to work in, and then the huge thing happens in the mid-season where Hank gets shot, and he's kind of trying to figure out how he's going to move on with his new life, as well as the twins. Are they going to die? Are they going to live? And Gus, meanwhile, is just getting more and more strong throughout the course of this season, which is really cool, because Gus is by far the best villain that Breaking Bad has ever had. So it's really fun to rewatch that, knowing what happens at the very end of his life, and just kind of knowing that that's going to happen. So I was really, really happy to revisit all of that. But the end of the season definitely kicks in. I forgot to talk about the RV. The RV gets destroyed in this season. I love that episode. It's one of my favorite episodes. And it's very nostalgic, and it's metaphoric of him moving on. He's not this low-level drug dealer. He has to make meth in a freaking RV in the middle of the desert. No, he has his own place. He's known as Heisenberg. That's who he is now. We get more used to the fedora Walt. The more and more you get through this season, and even the start of the 4th season, we see him put on his fedora more and more. Kind of simulating that he is, the line between Walt and Heisenberg is blurring a little bit. Particularly by the end of this season, you can really see it kind of blur. Of course, by the time we get to season, I think it's 5, we get to watch the Say My Name episode. It gets crazy, because then you're like, wow, there really isn't a difference between Walt and Heisenberg anymore. And you really get to start seeing that in this season. So it's really fun to kind of see that transition. I thought that was really, really cool. My favorite episode of the season, I think, maybe even of all Breaking Bad, I love the Fly episode. It's freaking beautiful. It's incredible. You can see Walt going crazy. He's realizing that the big part about that episode that I think people kind of skip over a little bit is the fact that he realizes he's alive. He says, I'm not dying anytime soon. I'm not dying of cancer anymore. I can live for the foreseeable future. And that makes him sad that's incredible, because he realizes he's doing all this work. He became a villain in his own story, just to provide for his family who doesn't need it anymore. They don't want it, and he's not going to die anytime soon. So really, for him, it was all for nothing, and that was such a cool dynamic that I didn't anticipate feeling at that moment, because I didn't feel like they were going to address it, and then they did. That episode really stuck with me the first time that I watched this. I think I watched this for the first time when I was like 14, 15, and that episode really stuck with me for the longest time. So I was really excited to check that one out a few days ago. So good. And then, of course, by the end, we get to half and full measure, which I forgot to talk about Gale. Gale Boetticher is one of my favorite characters to ever grace the AMC screen. First of all, the actor's incredible. He really is. I love how he is exactly who Walt wanted to be. You know, we see Gale, who's this really genius chemist, and he just wants to try and be as good as he can. And he's really smart. And then he gets trashed on, you know, because Walt fires him basically to train him in for Jesse. And that's kind of what happened with gray matter, right? If you remember back in season 2, beginning of season 2, when they're talking about gray matter, you learn that, you know, his partner kind of strayed away and he leaned towards education. And it's a shame, because he could have been even better than his business partner. But he decided to go the education route. And that's kind of where we see Gale in the beginning of the season. I guess it's mid-season we really meet him, where he's kind of, you know, he's trying to become the better person he can be, but he gets pushed out by Walt. And Walt is literally saying, no, I don't want you. I want somebody a little worse. And that kind of is what Walt did to himself. He says, I don't want to be this big chemist. I'm okay with just being an educator. And that's kind of this line that he doesn't really realize he even did it to himself. Which brings me to full measure, when Jesse is forced to kill Gale. Now, I want to talk about this in terms of two perspectives, from Walt and from Jesse. Wesley. From Walt's perspective, he's really killing himself there. That's really where we see the line snap, and it gets closer and closer from Walt being Heisenberg and Heisenberg being Walt, right? Like, these are one and the same in this one instance, right? Because Gale being a representation of Walt's older self, right? Because younger self, we see that, you know, he's a smart man, he's making a ton of money, he's doing things purely, and it's great, but he has to go. And so killing Gale, not only furthering the plot along with, you know, making sure that Walt doesn't actually die here, it furthers along Walt's kind of descent into darkness here. He becomes more and more the villain by each episode, and by this episode, you really know he's the villain. You know for sure. And from Jesse's perspective, of course, I mean, this is really the first time he's killed someone and had to kind of live with this debt, you know? He's like, I have murdered someone. He is dead because I killed him. I looked him in the eyes, he begged for his life, and I shot him. And I think that's something that really develops Jesse's character, because we see him become less and less of the Jesse he once was. You know, in the first season, he's a kid, and now he's a man. He killed someone. It's similar to Walt, how when he killed his first person, he became Heisenberg. Really, he was like, that was when it snapped. That was when it became two different personalities. And the same thing happened here for Jesse. It just took a little longer, you know, and it makes sense because he's also younger. It takes more time, and his characters are so different now. I mean, if you look at season 5 Jesse compared to season 1 Jesse, or even El Camino Jesse, like, they're very different people. And I think this is definitely where the line splits. I mean, even in this season, we see him dance around in the yellow bubble that he makes for himself in the suit, in the lab. And that's old Jesse. We see that right before he kills Gale. I mean, it's maybe 2 or 3 episodes before he literally kills someone. And it's that snap of a difference. And you don't even see him deal with it. You just hear the gunshot go off, and then you have to wait like a year for the next season to come out. Lucky enough for me, it's on Netflix. So I could just start the next season right away. And you really see him deal with that, but that's a discussion for later in the following season. Review for that probably coming out within the next week or two, because I am speed running the hell out of this show. But let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about all of these things. You know, I mean, we didn't even really talk about Gus, mainly because he's so plastic. You know exactly what he is. He's the villain, sort of. We'll talk more about Gus in the next video, talking about season 4, because that's a big one, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But that being said, the first half of the season is rather lackluster. That's why I can't give it a perfect score. I have to give Breaking Bad Season 3 an A-. Have you guys seen this season of Breaking Bad? Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about it. I enjoy Breaking Bad so much. This is just definitely one of the weaker seasons in terms of the first half. Second half escalates like crazy. You get a couple of my favorite episodes of all time, and it's just incredible. So check it out if you haven't already. If you haven't already, I just spoiled the whole thing for you. So I guess you no longer have to, but I still would recommend it because it is pure. It is the best show that's ever happened in the world. So check it out if you haven't already. And please consider subscribing. It helps me out a whole lot. I would truly appreciate it. And check out my podcast, link in the description below. Me and my friend Nate just shoot the shit. So definitely consider checking that out, subscribing, and as always, keep watching movies and television, stay educated, and I'll see you guys in the next video.